On our journey through the lands of the Bible, we found ourselves lingering in the old city of Jerusalem. Here, in this place that is so sacred to Jews, Christians, and Muslims, it is easy to imagine your way back to around 970 BC, when the Bible says the famous King Solomon reigned.
Solomon became, in a sense, the very ideal of the Oriental emperor, as a sort of magnificent king.
Under David and Solomon, the Israelites were able to amalgamate into a pretty powerful kingdom.
Solomon seemed determined not to repeat the mistakes of his father, King David, and his brothers, whose lust and pride wreaked havoc on their kingdom.
Solomon becomes the greatest king because he's of the Davidic dynasty, and yet he has none of the faults, none of the sins of David.
Solomon is known as the man of peace.
And a man of wisdom. Instead of killing his enemies, Solomon, we're told, married many of them, including a pharaoh's daughter. In other instances, he disarmed them with his wit and his wisdom, like the famously beautiful Ethiopian Queen of Sheba.
The Queen of Sheba went to see Prophet Solomon.
In the Bible, the Queen of Sheba is drawn to Jerusalem for an audience with Solomon after hearing of his great wisdom.
He treated her as an equal, and as an equal politician. He was not surprised by the fact that she is a queen and that she rules a nation.
According to Ethiopian tradition, during their meeting, Solomon and Sheba became lovers, and the Ethiopian royal family descends from their union.
When the Quran gives you this example of such a powerful female ruler, this inspires me. This tells me that I have a place in the world of politics.
And while it's possible that Solomon's wisdom may have attracted those seeking his counsel, so too would the temple that he's said to have built.
Solomon's temple was, of course, an astonishing building.
In the Bible, pages and pages are devoted to describing the temple.
Solomon's temple, as far as we can tell, was built as a replica of the Garden of Eden, when human beings and gods lived close by one another.
And through the ages, people have imagined what it might have looked like.
It's a very common human yearning to feel that God is here among us, and that in this abode we have built, that is where God dwells with us on earth.
And the Bible says that Solomon placed the Ark of the Covenant at the center of the temple in the most sacred spot. But it's said that the temple was destroyed when the Babylonians sacked Jerusalem around 600 BC. And ever since then, this is where many people believe that the great temple once stood, a mountaintop in the center of the walled old city. It is a storied place layered with spiritual meaning and now dominated by the Golden Dome and a Muslim mosque. But just a short walk away outside the city walls, a picture is emerging of the ancient and humble beginnings of Jerusalem, which the Bible says was founded by Solomon's father, David.
The city of David was a rather small settlement, hardly can be termed as a city, most probably unfortified, but it was here somewhere.
We met Doron Ben-Amin, an Israeli archaeologist who leads a team digging for evidence of the original city, which would have existed around 1000 BC.
And it's got an interesting name. I mean, at least colloquially, we're calling it the parking lot dig.
Yeah, it's hard to believe, but 5 years ago, cars used to park right above our heads here. And once we decided to go beneath the asphalt, immediately the earlier remains of Jerusalem start to appear.
How much do we know about Solomon's temple, the first temple?
Actually, we know nothing. If not the biblical account, we had absolutely no proof about the building itself.
But they say they're getting closer.
We know that from the 9th century on, just a bit after the time of Solomon, most of the things that are told in the Bible are historically correct, most of them. But we are still left with a huge, large question mark regarding the time of David and Solomon.
One day maybe you'll find out.
Or not. This is also an answer.
Today, Jews pray at the only wall that remains of the Second Temple that was built later and also destroyed. The idea of the first temple was so powerful that for thousands of years, people of different faiths have considered that same spot sacred.
Even Muslims decided to build their sacred building on the same spot, on the same hill.
Even though evidence of the temple or the man himself hasn't been found, most scholars believe there was a Solomon.
But not the larger-than-life Solomon in the Hebrew Bible did not exist. He did not rule a vast kingdom. He did not build a huge capital city in Jerusalem. He was not a nationally or internationally known figure.
Even though the wisdom of Solomon is legendary, it turns out, like his father, he had flaws too.
His government is inflated. He runs it according to corvée, according to forced labor. He's marrying and marrying hundreds of wives and hundreds of concubines, who, as the Bible say, took his heart astray.
The wives Solomon took to enhance ties with foreign kingdoms turned him to their idols and eventually corrupted his own relationship with God. And the story of Solomon's downfall is an interesting window into the religious practices of the early Israelites.
People worshipped many gods. You could pick them up, you could see them, you could pray to them and expect that they would have effect.
This wasn't the Judaism that we know today. Archaeologists have found evidence that the Israelites worshipped idols before David and until the time of Jesus.
There are those who say, I suspect somewhat metaphorically, that we still worship false idols, whether it's money or fame or a big house or the right fashion, just the right pair of shoes. All of these could also be false idols.
So it seems that despite Solomon's best efforts, he too was a disappointment. And before he died, as a punishment, God told him the kingdom he loved would be no more.